Shamans aren't just trained, they're forged in fire. And this is how I was forged. I became who I am today to do this work. This path wasn't chosen casually, it was forged. I was born an only child to a woman who was also an only child, and she died when I was 2. I was raised by my grandmother, who by today's language would have probably been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, mixed with narcissistic and histrionic traits, or otherwise in our neighborhood just known as batshit crazy, and likely a few other things layered in. She did, however, do a few positive things that shaped my life, my love of nature being one of those. What I learned very early was this: I had to manage her, I had to manage myself, and I had to manage the emotional field between us, and she was also medically unstable, so I started managing that when I was 7. I learned regulation before I learned safety. I learned vigilance before I learned rest. I left home at 16, and I actually never went back. I worked full-time, I went to high school and graduated, and eventually I became a paramedic. My specialty was psychological emergencies and crisis intervention, and I didn't just work those calls, I actually taught them. I was a lead instructor to incoming paramedics, specifically focused on psychological crises. So when I say I've been sitting with dysregulation and trauma and human suffering for a long time, I really do literally mean my entire life. Later, I married a man who didn't yet know he had bipolar disorder. He wasn't diagnosed until 2 years into our marriage. To say that our relationship was tumultuous in the beginning was an absolute understatement. I watched manic highs and I watched devastating depressive lows. And I learned what it actually means to love someone whose nervous system is not stable. Once he was stabilized, we opened a residential program in Texas, and for 14 years we took in women with bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder, 6 women at a time. I developed a program rooted in dialectical behavioral therapy combined with other modalities that all focused on emotional regulation and distress tolerance. And we helped women who had been written off, women who had been hospitalized repeatedly, and women who had been told that they were too much. Lives changed. But after 14 years, I was really burned out, and I had spent years studying theology and world religion, indigenous medicine, and Eastern modalities. Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, and Louise Hay were all by my bedside. So I started searching. Found a workshop with Michael Beckwith in Costa Rica, and I decided to go. For 14 days, I drank ayahuasca, nearly 10 of those days, and my life changed. One night, nobody showed up to drink ayahuasca except for me. It was the night of my initiation, and I was told exactly what I would be doing for the rest of my life. When I came home, I gutted the program. I stopped doing what I had been doing, not because it didn't work, but just because it was incomplete, and I began hosting weekend workshops. My very first workshop had 17 women. Each of us brought our own healing modalities into that workshop, and one woman pulled me aside and she said, "You need to meet someone." She gave me the contact of a man who worked with mushrooms, his own mushrooms, prepared in a very specific ceremonial formula. She told me I should consider weekend retreats. My first group of mushroom experience wasn't with strangers. It was with my family and my tribe. There were about 8 of us. During that ceremony, one of the members becomes stuck, looped in thought pattern he couldn't exit. Another person came to me and said, "He's stuck." And in that moment, I heard the same voice that I'd heard during those 10 days of ayahuasca. And it said, "Go get your tools." I was brought my eagle feather, my rattle, my sage, my tobacco, several stones I used for specific purposes. And I sat beside him, and the voice said to me, "Follow my instructions. You've trained your entire life for this." It was that same voice I knew in ayahuasca, so I listened carefully. For about 10 to 15 minutes, I did exactly what I was told. And then his looped thinking stopped, and he entered a state of peace, and he had answers that he didn't have before. In that moment, I knew my life had changed, and it's never been the same since. For the last 9 years, I have facilitated weekend retreats using that same sacrament. Lives have been transformed. I often say I came the long way around or through the back door to become what some would call an edgewalker or a hollow bone. And if we're being honest, every shaman does this. Whether born into a tribe or not, the path is forged through challenges, through loss, and through initiation. It's not a perfect system, but as an edgewalker and as a hollow bone, I've learned who I am. And I've learned what's possible when humans are supported properly through their suffering. I believe deeply that entheogens, when held with reverence, containment, and skill, have the power to transform lives, not because they fix you, but actually because they remind you of who you are. Thanks so much for sharing this time with me.